Yo, Ronaldo, what's up? It's good to be with you guys. I'm pumped to be talking about our new series. We're going to finish out our school year, talking about the step after origins in Genesis, which is the fall. What happens to humanity that causes such darkness and such evil if humanity was really good? So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to dive right in. Turn your Bibles to Genesis 3. If you don't have your Bibles, go ahead and pause this and get them. We want you guys in the Word with us. We'll give you a second. That's 1 second. Okay, so Genesis is right at the beginning of the Bible. So turn in with me to Genesis 3. Again, we spent a lot of time in Genesis 1 talking about what is the origin of all things. Who is God? What is God? Why are we here? And what are we supposed to do with it? And now, after we receive that good purpose to be caregivers of creation, to be blessers, the way that God blesses humanity, we see in Genesis 3 that we don't quite live up to that purpose, that there's something that we choose that hurts us and hurts our world. So let's read Genesis 3:4 together. But the serpent said to the woman, "You will surely not die, for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." There are some things that you can come back from, okay? So, for instance, if I get frustrated with one of my dogs or with CJ, they just bounce right back, okay? But if I get frustrated with Lauren, my wife, that's a whole different situation, right? So my CJ's been doing this crazy thing. We were at the beach for the beginning of the week for a day or two, and CJ's been doing this thing where he slaps himself in the head. I know, it sounds just crazy, and he's a goober, but and I'm sure he'll grow out of it, but it drives me nuts. And not only that, but as soon as you correct him on anything, it's his first instinct. So, CJ, don't touch that outlet. You'll get shocked and die. And his first instinct is and he's just it's hard like that. And then it's no, don't hit yourself in the head. Well, immediately, I think that confusion and the frustration, because he doesn't know how to explain those emotions, cause him to hit himself in the head again. And it's no, CJ, stop hitting yourself in the head. It drives me nuts, right? Well, CJ was eating something, and he was covered in it, and he, would not let us clean him. And I'm like, CJ? And so immediately, he knows we're frustrated with him, or I was at least, and he immediately goes to smack us on the head and gets food and stuff all over his head. And it's CJ, what are you doing? Stop it. Just hold your hands down. Don't hit yourself in the head, and hold still so we can clean it, And he could tell, if you guys know CJ at all, when he gets upset, Mr. Lippy comes out and he's he's all, and Lauren's he knows you're frustrated. And I'm yeah, I know, he'll bounce back, okay? That is not the same with Lauren, right? So if I get frustrated with CJ and lose my temper with him, Lauren is she's mad at me way longer than CJ is. There are some things in life that you can come back from, but this whole story is not one of them, right? There are things that you can do in this world, and there's healing for it, right? And there's redemption for it. For instance, through Jesus, we know that no matter what we do, no matter what crime we commit, no matter what sin we do, no matter what offense we commit, Jesus can forgive us and heal us of that, right? But in the consequences of those actions, we don't always find healing. We don't always find fullness again in this life. So for instance, if you kill someone, Jesus will forgive you. And you can work on your relationship with Jesus, and you can fall in love with Jesus. He loves you, and you can walk together through your life. But that life is going to be in jail or with a death penalty. Jesus does not say that we should ignore sin. Jesus says that he forgives all sin, right? And regardless of where you stand on murder or death penalty or whatever, there are some things in this world that you just can't come back from, right? When you're a jerky 8th grader and you break up with your girlfriend, you might end up marrying her, right? Like I did with Lauren. But, if you really hurt people and you continue to do that in life, it doesn't always work out. You can't always come back from it. So this is one of those cases. This is, one of those huge monumental moments in history. I was watching a documentary on the German Nazi mega structures and their mega weapons and stuff, which I love that kind of nerdy history stuff. And that the craziness is once Germany attacked Britain, right? They started bombing, and they bombed London. Once they bombed London, the first one was actually an accident. They were going for military targets first, and then they bombed London by accident when some planes got lost, and that set it off. Britain started bombing Berlin, just sending bombing runs straight up to Berlin, and it became this huge, at that point there was no coming back. Hitler wanted retaliation against Britain because they bombed Berlin. So Hitler, instead of continuing the pattern of bombing military installations and radar towers and all that stuff, he says, go for the cities, go for the people, because they're attacking Berlin. And the sin of murder and bombing and killing and cruel warfare, right? Instead of attacking military, you start attacking civilians, right? That sin propagates itself. It keeps going, and it causes more sin, and it's like a snowball. And then what happens is, that was the turning point in the war for Britain, because instead of attacking all the radar towers, Germany attacked civilian areas, and that allowed Britain to track the German planes with their radar. They had an incredible radar system. And that kind of stuff is fascinating to me, because they're moments and turning points in history where you can't come back from this, right? This is going to cause a huge change in everything. And that's what we see here with the fall of man. God creates this perfect world, and he leaves it, a power, his image, and the ability to choose whether they want to obey God or not, whether they want to choose being with God in the garden and walking with God, or they want to choose sin. And here Eve makes her choice, and Eve presents that choice to Adam, and he makes his choice, and they choose sin. There's all kinds of analogies out there, right? If you have a cup of sweet tea and you put one drop of sewer water, right, or of dog pee or something in the sweet tea, will you drink that sweet tea? No. And should you drink the sweet tea? Definitely not. There's probably diseases. Okay, so the pollution that happens at the sin event here distorts all of creation. Now, it's hard to imagine that, but let me remind you of the stakes, and then we're going to move on and talk about one other passage. With the fall of humanity, Adam and Eve don't just represent an individual person's choice. So Adam and Eve are not just Chris and Lauren, right, or something like that. They're not just people. They are perfection, right? So they represent the perfection and culmination of all of humanity. So every strength that I have, and every strength that you have, and every strength that anyone has, Adam and Eve had those strengths. They were the perfection of humanity. So when they choose sin, in effect it's saying humanity as a whole cannot stand against this temptation. The perfection of humanity cannot stand against this temptation. You and I made the same choices in Adam because he represented us perfectly. He represented me better than I could ever represent myself, and he still chose sin. It's really important that we understand that the fall, we're going to talk about original sin later in the series, but the fall represented all of us, okay? So there's one other passage, and this is one that's absolutely crucial for us to check out this series and to start it and to get on the right foot. Turn to Romans 5 for me. If you don't have pens, pause the video, get some pens. I really want you guys underlining these passages in your Bibles so that when you come back on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, depending what campus you are, you can dig into these passages, okay? All right, now we're going to read a section, and it's a little bit long, but underline this as you read and try and get the gist of it. There's a point in here that's repeated multiple times in different ways because it's absolutely crucial. We're going to look at Romans 5, verse 12. Start reading with me, okay? Therefore, just as sin came into the world through one man, and death through sin, and so death spread to all men because all sinned. For sin indeed was in the world before the law was given. But sin is not counted where there is no law. Yet death reigned from Adam to Moses, even over those whose sinning was not like the transgression of Adam, who was a type of the one who was to come. I know this is a little confusing, but keep going with me. Verse 15, but the free gift is not like the trespass. For if many died through one man's trespass, much more have the grace of God And the free gift by the grace of that one man, Jesus Christ, abounded for many. And the free gift is not like the result of the one man's sin. For the judgment following one trespass brought condemnation, but the free gift following many trespasses brought justification. For if because of one man's trespass, death reigned through that one man, much more will those who receive the abundance of grace and the free gift of righteousness reign in life through the one man, Jesus Christ. So we have two pivotal points in history, right? There's huge moments in between these, right? You got Abraham and Noah and the flood. You have the rise of Israel. You have historical moments, right? Like Troy and ancient Greece and the Battle of Thermopylae. These big moments, right? That we remember. But these are not the moments, right? These aren't moments that shape everything, right? So even Alexander the Great, right, who conquers most of the known world, okay, he doesn't have it's not a pivotal turning point in the history of everything, right? Because what happens, right? So even though Alexander tried really hard to involve the people he conquered into his empire, in a very short time the empire was way shrunk down. Those moments don't hold a candle to these, and I'll tell you why. When we talk about the fall of humanity and we talk about the cross, we talk about redemption in Christ, which is what Paul's talking about here. In one man, we all sinned, and in one man, we're all saved, okay? When we talk about those moments, those are spiritual moments. And you and I feel this tension every day in our life. We see our siblings, we see our parents, we see our friends, and they frustrate us, and our flesh gets angry, and it gets frustrated, it gets confused, like CJ hitting his head, and we bury our heads in the physical, and we lose sight of the spiritual. That's what happens with Adam. He has this beautiful, perfect spiritual connection with God, and he loses sight of that, and he embraces the physical desire to take and eat the one thing that he should not take and eat. And unknowingly, he allows all kinds of evil into his heart and soul. So these are spiritual moments. They're moments where things on a deeper level happen. And the same thing happens with Jesus on the cross, right? There's a reason that the whole physical world reacts so violently. The veil is torn in the temple. The sky gets dark. The ground shakes, okay? Because the spiritual world is being upheaved. All of humanity was affected in Adam. And in Adam, the whole world was cursed. It was a huge spiritual upheaval. Well, in Jesus, the whole world is blessed. The whole spiritual world is upheaved again, and it's given the opportunity to enjoy the grace of Jesus. So where does sin and evil come from? What is the fall? What is all this? The fall is when perfect man sinned. When perfect man, given one law, one rule, chose not to obey, chose to put themselves before God. And in that, all of us, because they were the perfect man, fell. All of us sinned. In Jesus, however, one man, the perfect man, again, representing us perfectly, succeeded, gave up everything, and died for you and for me. So in our lives, when you see sin in your life, we choose to embrace ourselves over God. But in Jesus, we have the opportunity to say, no, wait a second. I've been saved. I've been empowered to make a different choice, to lead a different life, to follow a different man, a different Adam, right? A different humanity. I'm not going to be a part of the problem anymore. I'm going to be part of salvation. I'm going to be part of the solution. I'm going to enjoy the life that Jesus sets an example for. I don't know what your personal sin struggle is, but you need to be honest with yourself and with God right now. The fall and sin coming into the world was not God creating evil or God forcing evil so that we could learn a lesson, or it wasn't even Satan forcing evil or attacking or those kinds of things. Did he tempt? Yes. Was it an attack? Yes. Did he know the consequences? Probably. But humanity chose in Adam to do sin. And don't be deceived. When you go from here, and you choose to continue in sin. You are making a choice in your life about putting yourself over God. You're choosing the path that leads to darkness. We're going to talk about what the consequences of sin are later in the series, and it's awful. It's terrible. But you need to realize there's two paths in your life. There's either embracing sin and allowing it to thrive in your life, and that will push you away from God. It will distract your heart, distract your life, and you will only get struggle from it. Or there's a path that says, I want something different. I see it in Jesus. He loved people even when they didn't love him. He served people even when they looked different from him, or they were poor, or they were homeless. He didn't worry about money and things. He worried about people and life and love and peace and justice. So, whether you're talking about your friendships, your family, your personal sin struggles, whatever's going on in your heart, the anger that you might struggle with, the perversion you might struggle with, the dirty jokes or the language you shouldn't speak that you might struggle with, those sins will lead you down a path away from God. Choosing to move in a different path will bring you closer to Jesus, closer to the perfect way, the perfect life, the redemption of humanity brought back to perfection like Adam was at the beginning and like Jesus was. Now, this is not about you going home and conquering your sin. It's not about you going home and being perfect. It's about you going home and saying, am I going to pursue sin or am I going to pursue Jesus? And every time Jesus will say, hey, look, I know you sinned, but I love you. And you'll get to move through life with him. And pretty soon you won't want to sin. And when you do struggle with sin, it's a blip on the radar. And we're moving towards enjoying life forever with him the way he enjoyed life here. So you have a choice. When I leave this place, am I going to pursue sin or pursue Jesus? If you pursue Jesus and you mess up, it's okay. Paul says, how much greater is the grace of Jesus than the condemnation that Adam brings? You're okay. But if you pursue sin and ignore Jesus, the consequences of sin will envelop you. And that ends in what we call hell, right? That's what hell is. It is the full and final consequences of sin. It is the sin and sin and sin and sin that leads to death. So you might slip up pursuing Jesus, but there's a big difference between leaving this room today and saying, I'm going to pursue sin or I'm going to pursue Jesus. My prayer for you today is that you pursue Jesus.